All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This is the session entitled Meet the Board. This is the board of yet another society, also known as the Perl Foundation and the Raku Foundation. You will see that name across the bottom here, the board, the Perl and Raku Foundation. I am Peter Krawczyk. I am the treasurer of the foundation. Apologies for Stuart. He cannot make it. He is on a airplane runway as we speak. So he had intended to join as he did yesterday, but again, unfortunately, he's otherwise unavailable. So we're really here today to have a conversation with you. This is less a presentation and more a discussion. So after we get through the first, there's a handful of slides here. Once we get through that, we'll open the floor and we'd like to have a discussion with you about how we, the board, and the foundation as a whole can better serve the community. So again, as I said, the proper legal name of the foundation is Yet Another Society. It is registered in North America, specifically in Michigan. We are all volunteers here in service. We have what's known legally as a DBA, which is a doing business as, which allows us to represent ourselves as both the Perl Foundation and the Raku Foundation. And we are dedicated to the advancement of Perl and Raku programming languages through open discussion, collaboration, design, and code. Now, that does not mean that we're the ones driving either one of those languages, design, that sort of thing. We provide the administrative back-end functions for those things, registering trademarks and copyrights, and having accountants and legal representation, and providing insurance to events like this at the conference. So we're not up here telling you what the next features in Perl 538 are going to be. We're supporting the people who make those decisions, the leadership of which are the Perl Steering Council and the Raku Steering Council. Those are not parts of the foundation. Those are separate. So again, we deal with governance and organizational support. We deal with donations as a United States 501c3 charity that allows corporations to donate to the foundation to allow us to give grants and other support in order to advance the language. And those are then tax deductible to those corporations. And again, we're doing the essential things that are not interesting to the technical community. Okay. Nobody here, I think, wants to be the one to answer the lawyer in Japan about why Raku should be a trademark to the foundation, as opposed what I forget what the specific objection was, but that's in the US, yeah. So we deal with those things so that nobody else has to. As far as a foundation, though, we have our own goals in order to help support the language as a whole. So one of the things that we have on here is improved perception of Perl. That also includes Raku. We had a conversation yesterday about identity and brand advocacy, which is going to lead to a larger conversation about how do we market Perl and Raku to be more widely recognized within development communities. How do we retain and develop sponsors? We have some wonderful sponsors of the conference behind me. cPanel also happens to be a platinum sponsor of the foundation as a whole. We have on here, we have the community affairs team. That is an effort that we spearheaded that we are revisiting in the light of some challenges that we had starting that. We are looking to engage better, not only here, but outside the United States, especially over in Europe. We've been trying to see how we can help the community over there revitalize the Perl Conference in Europe, improving infrastructure and applications. We have supported the upgrade and the maintenance of rt.cpan.org. We're the ones, the foundation is the one who is paying for the maintenance and the support on that. And also, again, community engagement, where not only are we trying to speak with people at events like this, but we're also trying to create forums where people can come to us and ask for things that they need in order to help advance the language as a whole. One example of that is, and I mentioned this yesterday, was the Catalyst project has asked for an avenue in order to accept donations to help their developers be recognized for adding new features to Catalyst. That's a proposal that's in progress right now. And again, this is a conversation, so your support and ideas are always welcome to any of us. And we need you to help us as well. We are volunteers, and we ask for help from the community for volunteering. So one recent example that came up is that we need help from people to support the moderation of the RT queues on CPAN. We've got Best Practical does a really good job of managing a lot of the spam that comes into there, but we still need human moderators in order to help make sure that those queues are still usable and not just falling into disrepair. Conference organizers. Todd has done a wonderful job organizing the conference for this year. We have a potential conference location lined up for next year. Following that, we don't have any locations or volunteers just yet. If you know of a potential location and are willing to help get the conference run, we'd love to support you with that. Webmasters, content creators. We're looking for folks to join the board. We have at news.perlfoundation.org, we have a blog post up, a news post up that explains the criteria and what we're looking for people who want to join. We support programs like Outreachy, which Makoto talked about yesterday. We support Google Summer of Code and Google Summer of Docs. We do the legal legwork required in order to receive grants for that and then pay people out for doing that work. We are always looking for sponsor nominations. If your company is even interested in sponsoring Perl. Everybody who attended the conference received a prospectus. That is an example of the sort of sponsor outreach that we are developing and starting to move forward with so that we can continue to receive donations and do good work now and into the future. We are also looking for a grants committee chair, for somebody to put out the call for grants every 2 months, invite people to apply for those grants, and then when they come in, run the vote to see which grants are deserving of the foundation's support. Once those grants are approved, then they select grant managers in order to run and verify that those grants are done before the foundation pays out, and then just other small administrative tasks like making sure that blog posts get put up, resolving any problems that arise, that sort of thing. So if you know or are someone who is willing to accept that sort of responsibility, please come talk to us. We'd love to talk to you about that as well. This is where we transition to the conversation. We are interested in hearing what your views of the Perl Foundation are, what you feel the foundation can do for the community and for you. Why Perl? Why Raku? Why do we continue to develop in these? How do we evangelize Perl and Raku to other people in the community and help bring back some of that vibrancy that has been lost over the years? What features do we need? How can the board support development of those features and encourage other people to deliver on those? What are the risks and opportunities? There's all sorts of information, but we'd love to basically get your input on the sorts of topics that the board would be able to help with. And again, the board is not involved in a specific feature development, like, oh, Perl 538 would be awesome if it auto-completed every module for you. Well, we're not going to be able to spearhead that, but we can make sure that that feedback gets to the Perl Steering Committee or those sorts of things. And then if you have any questions for us, if you want to know more about what we do as a foundation, we are here to talk about that. We want to make sure that you leave this talk better educated about what we do and what we can do for the community at large. And I think, yeah, that's the slide. So with that, I'll open the floor. Okay, so the question is, what is an example of a grant that we've been given, that we have given to the community? So, in the most recent grant call, one of the grants that was just approved, in fact, the only grant that was just approved, was to Tony Cook for maintaining Perl 5. And so Tony puts a lot of time and effort into going back and fixing bugs that have been identified, and reporting on writing tests for those, and reporting on the bugs that have been fixed. And it's not all the new special feature development. It's just all these old bugs that have been sitting, old corner case compiler bugs, that sort of thing. Tony puts a lot of time and effort into that. It's a thankless job. And so he applies for a grant, and he gets paid by the foundation in order to maintain the core parts of Perl, so that the steering committee and that can work on developing newer and better features as a whole. Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Well, I just wanted to add, if you'd like more information, every time a grant is issued and every time that a grant proposal comes in, that's posted to the Perl Foundation blog, and a condition of being paid out on a grant is to post monthly grant updates, which are also on the blog. So I believe there's a category, but you definitely can search through and see all of the grants for the past, I don't know how many years.
Right. So all the grant information is available on the blog for anybody to review and see the breakdowns and how those were paid. Right. Right. Yeah. So the question was, how would someone apply for a grant to assist with outreach in order to reach out, for example, to perhaps high school students or in other areas, because there are plenty of employers who would be appreciative of an outreach grant. Dave would like to answer that question. Please. Thank you.
So cool question. I like it. One thing that I wanted to mention is something we started doing over the last couple years, is we have monthly meetings with community leaders. Now, who are community leaders? They're people essentially who volunteer to come to the monthly meetings and work with Perl Foundation. So folks like Dean there in the back is helping with marketing. We've had Alex Beamish has been helping with sponsorship. So that sort of thing is not something that would go to the grants committee. The grants committee primarily funds technical efforts. Something like that, I'd say, come participate in those monthly meetings. And if you or somebody else wants to work on outreach programs, that would go through like a different budgeting process, where the board would you'd say, I think I could use $2,000 or $5,000, and we just vote on it to kind of like fund that outreach effort. So it's a little different. The grants are really mostly technical things.
Although I would say, if you have anything that you're on the fence about submitting to the grants committee, feel free to submit it.
Yeah.
And if it's the sort of thing that should be done through that process, they can be corrected. And in the past, the bottleneck has been people willing to get paid by a grant committee, not that we have run out of money and said, we would love to fund this, but we don't have the money for it right now. We have not had enough people. So please err on the side of putting your hand up to help. And
So as Dean said, we have a monthly marketing meeting. It is announced every month on the TPF Slack, which everyone here should have been invited to the main channel. You can always send a message there, or send an email to hello@perlfoundation.org, and we can route that request appropriately and make sure that you're included in those sorts of discussions. Makoto?
And also speaking of, well, it is not the direct answer for your grant question, but also I wanted to add, we hire summer interns every year, students and also some people between jobs. We do it every year. So we are also looking for mentors to help them. Last year we hired 2 students, and last year we had also 2 students. So we are also doing summer internship as well.
Yes. Right. No, Todd has sworn off this conference for at least a year. So, but again, the question was how do we approach grants of a non-technical nature for pretty much. Right. So, or how do we get, or how do we pay people to do that sort of work? And the answer again, it starts with an email to hello@perlfoundation.org. We are glad to have these conversations. We are glad to say this is absolutely something that the foundation would support, or this is something that the foundation would support with these caveats, or what have you. All of these are conversations. We have undergone over the last couple of years a big shift to being a much more open and transparent organization. There's still a long way to go. We'll all fully admit that, but we definitely encourage conversations because we can't do our best job supporting the languages without that sort of input. I will say that Todd did have pretty much free reign as far as if he felt the need to hire an intern or someone in order to help with the conference. We pretty much authorized that. In fact, I think we even approved a bunch of tickets for university folks and whatnot around here, and so yeah, that sort of conversation it does happen, but we don't publicize it as much as we could. So again, an email or a Slack message or any sort of communication to us will start that conversation, and we are always open to that.
I just want to add one thing though. The email most likely to get
Microphone. Yeah.
You go ahead.
the email most likely to get a good response does not start with "you should do." It starts with, "Hey, I'd love to help the foundation do." Because if it's just like telling us what to do, as Pete said, we need more volunteers. So if you want to volunteer to help coordinate interns to help with some of these things, that would be so awesome. And I'm not trying to pick specifically you. Anyone, we really need more volunteers to help with this stuff.
And one thing I wanted to add on that is that we would love to fund more things and have more volunteers to receive funding. The only hesitation that we have had in the past about funding certain types of work is that we don't want to pay someone for something that other people are volunteering to do and have sort of a dichotomy there. We are not, the board is not a technical role, but all of us are technical people. I think that I don't believe I'm speaking incorrectly for other people, but certainly for myself, I could have like one of those, I'd rather be coding bumper stickers. We would all, and many other people who volunteer to do the sort of non-technical, more administrative side of things it's not they're doing it because they believe in the mission of the organization and supporting the community. I would hate for anybody who is volunteering their time to feel like, oh, somebody else is getting paid for doing this exact same work. So that is something we think about. Is this something that would sort of cheapen the out of the goodness of their heart volunteer work? But that is not a reason to roll any of those things out. It's just we would want to make sure that anything that is funded comes with a different level of accountability or expectations that make it clearly distinct from work that people are volunteering to do.
And I'm going to add one more note to that. If you ask for $50,000 to write a 5-line module that helps you and 3 other people, that's not likely to get approved. On the other hand, if you ask for $10,000 to go through and clean up all of the pod references to functions that have been deprecated or otherwise no longer well used, or all these other things, That's something we pay interns to help with that. That's an example. The most successful grants have a wide audience and provide a service to people that otherwise would go unwanted. It's the grants basically, again, as I go back to Tony Cook, the grant serves the purpose of getting work done that it's that drudge work nobody really wants to do, but it helps so many people. And so that's where the grant support comes in. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. So the question was whether the board would be willing to be mentored in aspects of being a board from a non-technical perspective. And the answer to that is yes. We have actually, you point out the cat. I'll mention this again. The first incarnation of the cat that we did, we actually paid for training from a recognized training institute. We actually had almost a dozen people go through that training, offered it twice, basically asked for volunteers, anyone that wants to go with it. And I'll just put it this way. The training was helpful in some ways, but it did not fully address the situation that ultimately developed. And so that's why the cat is on hiatus. And we would love to come up with a way that is palatable to the community as a whole in order to reintroduce something like that. We would love to do that. There are so many difficulties in doing that, and to be quite frank, having done that as a board and failed at that so spectacularly the first time, the next effort is going to need something way over the top, corrected, so to speak, in order to be recognized by the community as a whole. So, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But yes, we also pay for lawyers, we pay for accountants, we pay for other people to make sure that we're doing what we legally have to do. If people have suggestions or volunteerisms, we are definitely open to that. And again, we're looking for people to join the board. We would love that. But again, it's a conversation that has to be started, and we're doing the best that we can. We're not CEOs by day trade. We're all programmers as well. So if we can do something better, we would love to hear about that.
And we should mention that in addition to the board,
Please.
There are two part-time individuals who are paid on an ongoing basis. One who has a marketing background and helped with this prospectus and is just really wonderful, and someone else who has a more sort of admin role, who I haven't gotten to know as well, but some members of the board know very well, and seems really great as well. So there is some support in that sort of capacity for marketing and admin sides of things.
The question is whether, as a North American United States 501c3 charity, whether we have to follow OFAC regulations. And the short answer of that is yes. The longer answer is that as long as we can document a chain of custody is the wrong word, but basically as long as we can properly document the folks that we are paying outside of the borders of the United States, and make sure that we have the documentation that proves that they are an actual person in that place and doing actual work, we don't generally have an issue with that. When we have a new grant recipient, or for example, we just paid a lawyer in Japan in order to I say just, it was a year or two ago. But we paid a lawyer in Japan to recognize the Perl and Raku trademarks in Japan. That's not generally a problem. What we would have problems with is if we were paying an organization that we did not have direct knowledge of and direct ties to. That's where that starts to get a little dicey. But we do have legal counsel review if we get into any sort of arrangements like that. I will also mention that we haven't begun investigating having a separate branch of the foundation based in Europe, so that we have more of a we have a difficulty right now, for example, in paying grantees in United Kingdom or in other countries because that money has to leave the United States, be converted into a different currency. Basically, the only way we have to do that right now is either PayPal or wire transfers, and neither of those are ideal. It would be better if we had for lack of a better term, a foreign bank account with which we could manage those funds as well for folks that are not within the United States borders. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'll be frank, I'm not sure because yeah. So the question was for folks who are in OFAC affected areas such as Iran and Syria and whatnot, are they ineligible for grants? The short answer is I'm not sure. If and when someone from those areas were to apply for a grant, when that went to legal review, then that discussion would come up. In general, to my knowledge, those sorts of restrictions are more predicated on things like cryptography, excuse me, not cryptology. That's different. It's there because it's not all software that is export controlled. It is only a specific software that is controlled. So in general, if somebody from an OFAC country were to want to contribute, I think we would be able to make it work so long as their contribution did not fall on that list. Yes. Okay, so the question was, Perl and Raku are two different languages. Are there issues that come up by having them both under the umbrella of a single foundation? So that's a thorny question. I'm not going to try and avoid it, but I need to come at it from a couple different angles in order to get there. First of all, the foundation was started in 1999 when Perl 5 was it. Okay, Perl 6 hadn't been conceived. Well, Larry may have had the idea, but he hadn't announced it yet. So the foundation started as a support for the Perl conference. Well, at the time it was yet another Perl conference, YAPC. So the foundation started as a vehicle in order to support that. And then over the years, as Larry announced, Perl 6, and now it has become Raku, because they were both languages authored by Larry, and because it was a lot of the same folks in the same community who were devoting time initially to both, but then slowly choosing sides, it made sense for that support to continue because the conference was including both languages. It's I think pretty much every YAPC since about 2003 or so has had both tracks. It might have been called the Perl 6 track or the Raku track, but pretty much every well, I know for sure every North American one has. I'm not sure about all the other ones around the world. So fast forward quite a bit to about 2 or 3 years ago. The Raku Steering Council, of which Daniel is a member, started having a conversation about having a Raku Foundation. Now, one of the other historical artifacts is that we have had donations to the foundation that have been earmarked specifically for Perl 5 or for Perl 6. And over time, that language has changed, of course, but those funds still exist within the organization. And a couple of years ago, the Raku Steering Council approached the foundation and said, we're interested in knowing more about what money is available to us, and that we're also considering starting our own foundation. What would need to happen? And over the course of those conversations, and you can speak more to this in a moment, Daniel, but over the course of those conversations, it came out that because the foundation is focused on the administrative side and not on the development side, and the level of effort that would be required to duplicate this same structure for another language would be overwhelming and redundant, that it made sense for those functions to remain within the foundation singularly. And so the Raku Steering Council approved the DBA name of the Raku Foundation being given to Yet Another Society, hence having both foundations under the same roof. Now, that said, there is one set of bank accounts. Within that set of bank accounts, there is some money allocated specifically to Perl 5 development that is not allocated to Perl 6. It must be done for Perl 5. There is some money that is allocated to Perl 6 development. It's not intended. So there is some money allocated for both, but the majority of the money is in what we call the general fund. And that money is decided every 2 months by the grant committee where that money can best be used. Now, to be fair, that money, the grants that they decide on are only the grants that are submitted. So we're not just reaching out and going, hey, this project, you need $5,000 or whatnot. So that is, so the summary of that whole thing is that the only problems that come up are from people who want to support one language or the other, but not both. We as a board have not had an issue as far as saying, well, we're not willing to support this language or that language or what have you. We as a board have tried to be as inclusive as possible, because at the end of the day, both languages came from Larry. Both languages had the same community when the foundation was started. It makes sense because there are still connections within each community to each other. And the core functions that the foundation does do not impact the direction of the languages. We just support the ability of other people to do that. And then Daniel, I'd like for your input, and then if Makoto or Dave want to add, please do.
So thank you for that question. It's very helpful, and it's a really good conversation to be having. I would echo the thought that there is some path dependency based on the history, and history from well before I became involved in our community. I'm not sure if we were starting from scratch, if we would decide to have one foundation or two. That said, these are, as you said, two different languages that are targeting in different stages in their life cycle, and that target different users and use cases, but they're not two random languages. They are, as Larry was fond of saying, sister languages, and the two communities have a lot of shared values and a lot of ways that their similarities sort of bring us together, and I believe a lot of the ways that the differences create some synergy and some ways for us to help each other. So on the similarity front, both languages are, as the legacy of linguists having a heavy hand in development, very expressive, very there is a spirit of that sort of using language, using linguistic concepts to express something that people outside of these two language communities don't, in my experience, tend to relate to in the same way. Similarly with the pushback that some people give about sigils, that's something that the two languages, there is a shared DNA there. There's also a shared culture in that, both languages are a little bit unusual in part because of this structure with an all-volunteer board and support from a variety of sponsors that we're very grateful to, but not the, one, Golang is Google's language, even if they have other participants. And I think that Perl and Raku are pretty unusual in not having that sort of like big tech corporate ownership control side of things. So, and in some ways, I feel like it makes us both underdogs, and it's good to help each other out and to be in a community that has that very strong open source free software ethos. So there's a lot of commonality there. I also think that, as you pointed out, there is a lot of difference in the communities and where they're targeting. I hope that allows us to be helpful to each other. One thing I will note just as like a demographic fact, the average Raku programmer is significantly younger than the average Perl programmer. And I think that both the wisdom and experience of people who have been programming for a lot longer is extremely helpful. And that's a wonderful perspective to have come into the Raku community, and helps us tremendously. I believe that the energy and excitement of people who discovered Raku in college or high school and are really excited about the future can be helpful to the Perl community. And so I think that there is a way that both what languages have in common and what is different about the language communities can be helpful, but it is an ongoing conversation, and it's one that I know many people many is perhaps not the right word. I know that some people in the Raku community and some people in the Perl community feel strongly that the communities should not share a foundation. I know that many people enjoy and derive a lot of benefit and fellowship from the shared community. It's certainly not something that any of us are taking a hard line, my way or the highway sort of approach to. And it's something that we give a lot of thought to. And I'd love to hear your thoughts or anyone else's thoughts on that, and continue that conversation.
Gentlemen, do you have anything to add to that? What you guys said was good.
Okay, we have about 7 minutes left in this session. So while we would love to continue in-depth conversations about these topics, time is going to begin pressing against us. So if anybody has any additional questions not on those topics, we'd love to be able to hear those. If not, we can continue revisiting those same topics.
And we'll all be around.
Yeah, and we're all around the conference as well. Okay. Are there, I suppose if we have any other questions back on those topics, that's fine as well. Is there any other comment? Okay, so the question is, according to the prospectus, $60,000 has gone to Raku development in the last 2 or so years. $50,000 has gone to Perl 5 development. How is that amount determined? How is that earmarked? How is that decided? So first and foremost, the money that has been given is based on the grants that have been requested. So if I'm not 1,000% certain on this, but I do not believe since the pandemic began in 2020 that we have rejected a single grant. Don't quote me on that because I'm probably wrong about that, but
none of the core grants.
Right, none of the core grants. So part of that is just a function of though that's who's asked for the money. Another part of that is, as you said about the earmarks, where's that money coming from? Where's that money going to? The majority of our donations over the last few years have come from well, cPanel has been our largest contributor by far. cPanel has donated that money largely in support of this conference and the conferences in the cloud. There has not been that is well over 90% of the donations that we've received. We've received other donations as well. As you can see, Grant Street Group has also donated. We've received individual donations and whatnot. Those donations, for example, this year's cPanel donation is largely funding a lot of this conference as well. That said, the donations that are coming in right now are going into the general fund per se, but there is and I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but there is about $10,000 to $15,000 in funds that are earmarked specifically for Perl 5 development, and there are still about $40,000 in funds that are earmarked for Raku development. And the largest source of that is there was a grant back in 2008 by a single individual contributor who basically donated $200,000 at the time and said it goes into 4 buckets: Perl 5 infrastructure, Perl 5 development, Perl 6 infrastructure, Perl 6 development. And 3 of those 4 buckets are pretty much used entirely up. In fact, I think the Perl 5 development bucket was the first one to go. But there's still this one Perl 6 development / infrastructure bucket that remains. So there's still a lot of that that infrastructure bucket. It's not just for regular development. It's for all the supporting things that go into helping Raku development. And so it's a roundabout way of saying that in general, the donations that we receive are not earmarked, and so we apply when funding issues come up, like when we pay for lawyers or what have you. Those largely come out of the general fund, and those requests only happen when people actually request those things of us. We're not just out there giving. We're amazingly enough, we're not requiring parity. It just sort of happened. I mean, yes, it looks like Raku's getting the bulk of the attention, but again, it's more because they've asked for it, if that makes sense. Yes.
That's not something that's been over the last year or two. That's not new money. That's old money that's still remaining.
Right.
And most or all of the recent money in the last few years has gone to the general.
Yes. So the money, yes, most of the donations that come in right now come to the general fund, because unless a donor says, I want this specifically here or specifically there, it goes into the general fund. And yes, most of it has been general fund. Yeah. Right. Right, and that's what I had said. Most of cPanel's donation for this year and the past couple of years have gone to the execution of these conferences. And to be quite frank, the last couple of years these conferences would not have happened without the support of cPanel, and we are very grateful to them for that. That's why they are a platinum sponsor of the foundation. Yeah. Yeah, to be quite frank, the conference is costing over roughly $70,000 to put on. Attendee fees were about $10,000 of income. So it's largely sponsors that make this conference possible. We are pretty much at time, but if there's one more quick question, we can take that. Yes. Ooh, the best Golden Girl and why? I pretty much have to go with Blanche. Yeah. So the question was, which is the best Golden Girl and why from the show The Golden Girls? So. I don't think so.
I think we need community input on that.
Yes, we may, and so, yes, a call for input. Well, there was Rose, there was Blanche, anyway. Yes, thank you. Yes, so we are officially at time. So thank you for attending. Thank you for contributing your questions and listening to us talk about the foundation. We are all around and we are all open to further conversations as well. You can email us at hello@pearlfoundation.org. You can find us on the Slack. You should have received an invite to that. You can email, Slack, find us at the conference. We're open. We want to hear from you because we want to know how best to serve both communities. Thank you very much.